Welcome to Revenge with Arya. I wasn't invited to my parents' 30th wedding anniversary party. You create tension without even trying, my mother told me, standing at the kitchen counter like she was reading from a script she'd had time to rehearse. My father didn't argue with her. He looked at the wall and said, "We want this to be a good night, peaceful." My brother, the one who had organized the whole celebration, sent me a text 2 days later. "It's nothing personal. You know how things get when you're around." When their beautiful party dissolved into $19,000 of unpaid debt and public humiliation, every single one of them called me. But by then, I was standing on a ridge in the Smoky Mountains with my phone in my pocket and a view that went on for 4 counties. And I had already made my decision. My name is Winona Hale. I'm 29 years old. And if you think you already know where this story goes, stay with me. Because the most important part isn't what they did. It's what I finally stopped doing. I had been the invisible scaffolding of my family for most of my adult life. That's what nobody tells you about being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't make scenes at dinner. You get used without ceremony, and then faulted for the inconvenience of your existence. For 6 years, I had been the person they called when things went sideways. When my father lost his job and the mortgage payment came due, I transferred the money before he even finished explaining. When my mother's hospital bill came in higher than her deductible, I covered the difference without being asked. When my brother needed to borrow money to finish a basement renovation he had started on impulse, I handed him $4,000. He repaid with a birthday card and a running promise he never seemed to remember making. I didn't keep score. I genuinely believed that was what family looked like. You show up. You help. You don't build a ledger out of the people you love. But they kept a different kind of ledger. Theirs tracked my absences from Sunday dinners when I stayed late at work. It tallied the times I didn't laugh at the right moment or fell quiet when I disagreed with something at the table. It decided, somewhere along the way, that I was difficult, that I was a complication, that I was the kind of person who made good occasions heavier just by walking through the door. The anniversary party was supposed to be the event of the season for our family. 30 years of marriage. My brother had been planning it since February, a rented hall downtown, a caterer, a DJ, a custom photo slideshow, close to 70 guests. He had handled every detail himself, which was unusual for him. He thrives in the spotlight, not in spreadsheets. But he wanted this to be his moment as much as it was theirs. He wanted to be the son who pulled it all together. I found out I wasn't invited through a text message. That matters. Not a phone call, not a conversation at someone's kitchen table. A text. My brother wrote, "Hey, so about the party, Mom thinks it might be better if you sit this one out. Less chance of drama. You know how things go." I read it 3 times before I called my mother. She answered on the second ring and didn't bother softening it. "You know how you get around your Aunt Patricia," she said. "Last Thanksgiving was a disaster. I don't want that energy at something I've been looking forward to for a year." I asked her what, specifically, I had done at Thanksgiving. I didn't know. She told me this wasn't up for debate. My father called the next morning. His voice had the settled quality of someone delivering news he'd already processed. "Your mother needs this night to be nice," he said. "You understand. It's just one night." I asked if he understood what he was asking of me. He said, "Don't make this bigger than it is." I didn't cry right away. That came later, sitting alone in my car, in the parking garage at work, hands flat on the steering wheel, radio off. What I felt in that moment wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a specific, cold recognition. The recognition that the people who had called me in the middle of the night when they needed help had just decided I was too much of a liability to seat at a table and call their own. I booked a cabin in the Smoky Mountains that same afternoon. I had 4 days of vacation I'd been hoarding for nearly a year, saving for some undefined better time that kept not arriving. I packed a bag, made a playlist, and drove southeast, while my family decorated a rented hall with white lights and 30 years of carefully curated memory. The mountains were quiet in a way I hadn't known I needed. I hiked trails I'd never seen, cooked simple meals in a kitchen that wasn't asking anything of me, and sat on the porch each evening, watching the light pull back behind the ridgeline. I started a book I'd been meaning to read for 2 years. I slept without an alarm. For 2 full days, I didn't look at my phone, and when I finally did, there was nothing from any of them. Not a party photo, not a quick message, not a thinking of you text from anyone in my family, not one word. I told myself I had expected exactly that. But you can't fully outrun grief by changing your location. It finds you anyway, in the quiet, when you're looking at something genuinely beautiful and realize no one who loves you knows where you are. On the third night, I sat on that porch with a glass of wine and let myself feel all of it without trying to manage it into something smaller. The rejection, the pattern, the years I had shown up in every way that cost something, while being gently, methodically written out of every moment that was meant to feel like joy. And then I did something unplanned. I took a photo of the view. Fog settling into the valley, the lights of a small town below, the shapes of mountains, holding everything dark and steady. I posted it and sat with the caption box open for a while. Then I wrote, "Sometimes the best seat at the table is the one they forgot to save for you." You realize, sitting there without them, that you were never the problem. You were just the one who could see it clearly. I put my phone face down after that and didn't pick it up until morning. By morning, I had over 50 notifications. My brother's first message had come in at 11:14 the night of the party. Brief, no punctuation where it should have been. "Hey, can you call me?" Not a question. That particular absence of a question mark is never a good sign. I didn't call. I went back to sleep. By the time I woke up, there were 11 more messages, each one a degree more urgent than the last, the way weather escalates before the sky changes color. My mother, "Winona, call me when you get this, it's important." My father, "We need to talk. Call your brother first." My brother, the third message, "The venue is saying there's a problem with the payment. Can you call me? It's serious." My brother, the fifth, "Winona, please." I made coffee. I sat down at the small table by the window. I read through every single message with the particular steadiness of someone who has been someone else's emergency contact for long enough to know the first thing to do is breathe. I called my brother. He answered before it finished ringing once. His voice had been up all night in it. "The check bounced," he said. "The deposit check for the venue. I thought the account had enough. I moved money around and I miscalculated. And now they're saying we owe the full remaining balance and they're going to send it to collections and He stopped. Winona, I need you to help me." I set my coffee mug down carefully. "How much?" 19,000. I know how that sounds. But it's Mom and Dad's anniversary. If this goes to collections, it's going to follow them. And people already know. The Hendersons were there, and my mom's friend from her book club, and if it gets around, I said, "Didn't you tell me 2 weeks ago that this event wasn't the right setting for me?" Silence. I waited. This is different, Winona." "How?" More silence, a long, honest one. "I didn't mean it the way it came out," he finally said. "I know," I told him, "but you still sent it." I didn't promise him anything. I said I needed time to think. I hung up and finished my coffee, watching the morning fog lift off the mountains, and I sat with the full weight of what I was actually being asked to do. Come back. Write the check. Make the problem disappear. Collect whatever gratitude lasted 2 weeks before I was once again the person who made things complicated just by existing. I knew that version of myself by name. I had been her for a long time, and she was tired. My mother called at noon. Her approach was different from my brother's. She didn't lead with the money. She never did. She led with emotion, which was always her sharpest tool. "I know you're hurt," she said before I had spoken a word. "I know this whole situation has been. I made a mistake about the party. I can see that now. But your brother is beside himself, and your father and I are absolutely beside ourselves, and I just need to know if we can count on you." "You told me I create tension without even trying," I said. "Do you remember saying that?" A pause. I was stressed about the party. You've been stressed before and never said it quite like that. Winona, this is not the moment. When is the moment, Mom? Because it wasn't before the party, when there was still time to call me and talk. It wasn't during the party. Is the moment now, because you need something from me? She got quiet in the way she does when she's recalibrating. Then, softly, your father and I are humiliated. Do you understand that? Our friends were there. People are already talking. I understand exactly how that feels, I said. I meant it. She heard that I meant it. There was a long pause before she spoke again. That was a cruel thing to say, she told me. It was an honest one, I said, and I ended the call. I went for a long hike. The trail climbed hard for the first mile and then leveled into a ridge with a view I hadn't earned anything to deserve, but got anyway. I stood there for a while and breathed air that had nothing to do with my family's unraveling. I thought about the version of myself that would have driven home immediately, that would have written the check and absorbed the relief and the gratitude that would last maybe 2 weeks before I became, once again, the person who created tension without even trying. I knew her very well, that version of myself. She had been reliable for years. But she was done. My father called at 3 in the afternoon. He didn't try emotion. He used the tone he kept for final pronouncements. This has gone far enough. You have the savings. We know you do. Family takes care of family, Winona. That's not optional. I agree with you completely, I said. He started to respond. Which is exactly why I've been taking care of this family for 6 years, I said. While being quietly told I'm too much to include in anything that was supposed to feel good. What you're describing and what I've been doing are two different things. I think you know that. A pause then, don't be difficult. Dad, I said. I love you. I'm not being difficult. I'm being clear. I think this might be the first time you've noticed the difference. I hung up and sat on a fallen log at the edge of the trail and stayed there until the light changed. My hands were completely still. That surprised me more than anything else had. I had expected guilt. I had expected the familiar vertigo of letting someone down. Instead, I felt something I didn't have the right word for. In the moment, something close to the feeling of setting down a bag you've been carrying for so long you forgot it wasn't part of your body. I posted another photo that evening. Shot from behind, just my silhouette on the ridge, with the valley spreading out below. The caption read, "Funny thing about being left off the guest list. The world turns out to be very large and very beautiful, and it doesn't particularly care about your family's seating arrangements." Friends commented within minutes. People I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone reading between the lines. Everyone landing in almost the same place. You look so free. I didn't explain anything. I didn't need to. That night, I opened my journal. I had been keeping one since I was 17. Always coming back to it when things got complicated enough to require more than my own head. I wrote for almost 2 hours. I wrote about the first time I had quietly transferred money into my parents' account. The specific, private warmth of that. The belief I had carried that this was love made tangible and real. I wrote about the slow cooling of that belief over the years, each unreturned kindness, leaving something slightly harder behind it. I wrote about the party I had not gone to and the mountains I had found in its place. At the very end, I wrote, "I have been the foundation they built on and the door they closed. I am finished deciding which one I am based on what they happen to need this week." I drove home on a Sunday. By the time I got back, the situation had become fully public. The venue had filed a formal complaint. One of the catering vendors had left a careful but identifiable review online. 3 of my mother's friends had quietly untagged themselves from anniversary photos. My brother's fiancé had gone silent on every platform. The neighborhood knew. The polished, deliberate image of a happy and stable family had come apart with remarkable speed, and not one piece of that wreckage belonged to me. My brother came to my apartment on a Tuesday without calling first. He sat on my couch and put his face in his hands and apologized in the genuine, depleted way of someone who has finally exhausted all their other options. It was the most unguarded I had ever seen him. "I knew it wasn't right," he said. not inviting you. I knew it when I sent the text. Mom wanted it, and I went along because it was easier than pushing back. It was easier, I said, not to wound him, just to name it. Yeah, he looked up at me. And I'm sorry, I really am, but I'm also asking you to help us. Not because it fixes anything. I know it doesn't fix anything, but because I genuinely don't know what else to do. I looked at him for a long moment. This person I had grown up with, defended without always knowing it, given money to without building it into an argument. I thought about everything I had absorbed over the years that I had never once used against him. You've never known what to do with the messes, I said. That's not new. And I've always been the person who showed up when you ran out of moves. But I need you to understand something. Every single time that happened, it cost me something I never asked you to pay back. I just needed you to see it. And you didn't. None of you did. So I'm not going to fix this one. Not because I want you to suffer, but because I need this to mean something. He didn't argue. He left without the money and didn't slam the door on his way out. The weeks that followed were quieter than I had braced for. My mother sent short, careful texts. My father went silent, which was how he processed things he couldn't control. My brother worked out a payment plan with the venue that would take him nearly 2 years. It was genuinely hard on him, and I held that knowledge with care, while also recognizing it was not mine to solve. What moved into the space my family used to occupy surprised me. More of myself than I had seen in years. I signed up for a pottery class on Thursday evenings, which sounds small until you understand that I had not done something purely for my own enjoyment, without justifying it to anyone, in longer than I could honestly calculate. I made plans with friends I had been too tired, too stretched, too buried in other people's emergencies to see properly. I slept without the low, constant hum of waiting for the next call. I started cooking real meals again. I took long walks without a destination and came home later than I expected to, and it didn't matter at all. About 6 weeks after I got back from the mountains, I sat down at my kitchen table late on a weeknight with a cup of tea and my journal, and I wrote one more entry. About all of it. About the party I hadn't attended, and the silence that followed, and the strange, unexpected thing tucked inside the exclusion, which was the discovery that I could exist fully and contentedly outside the story they had written for me. The discovery that the invitation had never actually been the proof of anything. I had spent the better part of a decade believing that family was the only place where love was real. That belonging somewhere was worth almost any price. I had poured myself into that belief faithfully and quietly, and, it turned out, quite expensively, and some of it had been real. That part was important to hold, too. But the truth I had been slowly walking toward, the one I could finally see clearly from the ridge in Tennessee, was this. Love that only appears when you are being useful is not love. It is a transaction dressed up in the language of family. And I was not a transaction. I was a person who had simply been too close to see the difference. My mother called on a Sunday about 8 weeks later. The tone had changed again. Less desperate, more careful. She asked how I was, and actually waited to hear the answer. I told her I was genuinely well. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. She said she knew that what they had done was unfair. She said she hoped we could find a way to be in each other's lives again, differently than before. I hope that too, I said. And I meant it. Not as an invitation back to the old arrangement, where I was the load-bearing wall they only noticed when they felt the ceiling flex, but as a real possibility. Something that might take a long time to build, and might look nothing like what any of us were used to. I didn't promise her anything else. I didn't need to. That night I wrote one last line in the journal, under everything else I had written in those months. The ink dried while I looked out the window at the city, going about its ordinary life, indifferent and alive, and not waiting for me to make anything easier. They had left me out of the celebration. They had looked at everything I was and decided I was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be loved. And they had acted on that decision with very little hesitation. But in doing so, they had shown me something I could not have seen any other way. I had spent years chasing a seat at a table that was never quite set for me, arranging myself smaller, quieter, more convenient, trying to earn the invitation through usefulness and patience and a willingness to absorb whatever they needed absorbed. And all of that time, I had been somewhere else entirely. I had been building something of my own, without realizing it, out of every small choice I made to keep going. A table of my own. And mine would never be built on debt, or on the labor of someone they had quietly decided not to love.